Hi everyone! Today we are going to be taking a look at the full set of 129 Karisma Colour coloured pencils. These are those very sought after pencils that were discontinued in 2005, and they are just fantastic pencils but incredibly hard to source and find nowadays. So I would just like to say a massive thank you to those of you who over the past 4 years, which is how long I've been trying to collect the full set, those of you who have sent spare pencils that you had, colours that I needed to fill in some of the gaps in my collection, and finally today filling in the very last colour, which if you're interested was Salmon Pink. And yeah, so just a massive thank you to everyone who's sent me links to pencils that I could buy, or sent me some of their collection. Massive thank you. I wouldn't have been able to find all of these without you. So without further ado, let's have a look at the pencils. So yes, they were made in 129 different colours, but 108 was the official full set. So over the time of production, 129 were made, but you could only really get a full set of 108 at one time. So as you can imagine, the rest of the colours that made up the 129 were very difficult to find because they didn't exist for the whole period that Karisma's existed. Some new colours were made and then they were taken out, and vice versa. So some of the pencils in this set only had a very short shelf life within the Karisma colour brand. So very difficult to find a full set. But I'm just going to go through them with you now. So as you can see, I've put them all in an order. Now, the Karisma colour pencils, in case you didn't know, were like the original Prismacolors. So a lot of these pencils, both the colour names and the number, will correspond to our modern day Prismacolors. There are a few colours that the names have changed, and there are a few colours that can't be found anymore in Prismacolors. But for the most part, if you wanted to find a lot of these colours very easily, you would just buy Prismacolor pencils. However, the production quality of these pencils is far superior, and yeah, like I say, there are certain colours that aren't there. So the order that I've put them in follows very closely to my Prismacolor colour family chart that I made, and I'll link that below if you need that as well. So I have tried to separate sections of colour families so that they'll blend nicely together when I use them, and it'll be easy to find those blends within the set. Now, as I mentioned, some of the colours in Prismacolor don't exist in Karisma and vice versa, so I haven't been able to follow the colour family chart to a T, but I have created as close of a chart as I can to that colour family chart. There's a fly flying around, sorry. So yeah, I'll show you that in a moment, and we'll get swatching them so you can see all the colours. So the pencils themselves are bare wood, and they have a gloss kind of transparent lacquer over them, so they feel beautiful. They have this chamfered or slanted end, and they just look nothing like any other coloured pencil that you've ever seen. Just the whole look of them is wonderful. They look really like artist tools, if you know what I mean. I don't know what it is about them, but they're just absolutely gorgeous, and definitely my favourite ever pencil that I've ever used. I think they're even creamier than Prismacolor, and the colours are just even more vibrant. They're absolutely beautiful. So I've put them all in that order, as you can see, and this is the first two sort of layers, and then we've got the second layers with all the purples and the blues and our greens as well. Then we go into browns and greys. Now the greys are really interesting because we do have our warm grey 20%, 30%, 50%, same with the cool greys and the French greys, so very comparable to Prismacolor. But they also had some different greys in the original Karismas as well. Now for the warm greys, I've actually slotted those other greys in between, because that's how they sit. The colours actually make up an in-between of the percentages. So the colours that I'm talking about are, we have the warm grey very light here, the warm grey light, warm grey medium, and warm grey dark. So they're like the original set of greys. Now, as you can see, hopefully, if I bring this up to camera, the warm grey dark is actually darker than our darkest percentage, which is 90%. And then as you go through, you'll notice here that the leads fit seamlessly the colours fit seamlessly in between the percentages of the warm grey. So that's absolutely fantastic. All the French greys are the same, but we do get extra warm greys here. Now, as for the cool greys, which you can see we have the percentages over here, they do also have a cool grey older version of themselves. They're called cold greys. So we have cold grey light, very light, medium and dark, just the same as the warm greys, but they are a little bit more brown in tone than our more modern percentage cool greys. So these are a little bit more blue and the older ones are a little bit more brown. You'll see the difference when we come to swatching them, but I couldn't really slot those in between the cool greys because of that reason. Then we have the metallic colours, of which there are quite a few more than you will find in a standard Prismacolor set of today. So in a Prismacolor set, you'll find your gold, your silver and your bronze, which are here as well. The Karismas also had a copper, and they had a set of metallic colours. They had green, jade, blue, rose and purple. So I'm not a massive fan of metallic colours, but it's nice to have that selection and see, you know, the original colours that were in this set. So let's get to swatching then. So this is the chart that I have made, and I will leave a link for this chart in the description if you want to download it. If you have your own set of 129, or you have a smaller amount of pencils but you want to put them on the chart and see what you're missing, see which gaps you want to fill, then you can do that. I'll leave that as a free download. But as you can see, as with the Prismacolor family chart, I've put them in separate sections, so they will hopefully match up and you'll be able to blend with them. So let me zoom in and stop waffling and let's get swatching. All right, so I'm going to skip the white because we'll test that on black later on, and I'll go straight for the cream. Now, the only thing about owning these pencils is that because they are so rare, you really don't want to use them, which is a massive shame because I've always maintained that no matter the price, art materials should be used. They're there to have enjoyment and fulfillment out of them. They're not there to be ornamental. However, it is very difficult to maintain that opinion when you know just how difficult something is to find. It's like if you have a very rare antique, you wouldn't go around handling it and you know, chucking it in a box, or you know, using it or whatever to maybe damage it or whatever. And it's the same with the pencils. I really don't want to use them up because I know that I'll probably never find them again, or it would take me another 4 years more to find them. So yeah, it is quite annoying that I feel like I can't use them. But I do have a couple of like little baby spares. I'll show you exactly what I mean by baby spares as well. Like this kind of length, little baby ones that I can practice with and play with when I want my Karisma fix. So that's really good. But as for this set of 129, I can't see me using them very often at all, just purely to keep them as intact as possible. So we've got sand. All of these colours so far can be found in the Prismacolor set of 150. And I'll let you know when we come across colours that are not included or they've changed the name. So we've got yellow ochre. I'm hoping that I've done this chart correctly and that they are all going to be in a family order from light to dark. I spent quite a lot of time trying to format the chart because Excel was not playing nicely with me today. So I think that the link in the description will be a link to the original Excel file, because I did try and change it into a PDF, even a JPEG, just for people to download it a lot easier, but it just messed up the formatting completely. So it will be an Excel file download in the description. There's goldenrod, and we've got mineral orange. So these Karismas, or the Karisma brand, also brought out a set of aquarelle pencils. So they're water-soluble Karisma colours. I'm not sure entirely how many pencils there were in that set. And I know that they're even rarer than the actual Karismas themselves, because I've tried to source them and they are very, very difficult to find, incredibly difficult. But wouldn't it be great to have a water-soluble set of basically Prismacolor colours? It will be amazing. So if anybody's got one hidden away that they want to discuss with me, let me know, because I would love to have those in my collection as well. So this is the pumpkin orange, and I think so far we have got our colours in the right order. Like I said, there will be ones missing from the Prismacolor family chart that I did, because they just simply don't exist anymore. So, or they didn't exist back then rather. So then we've got Deco Yellow, and all the numbers should be the same as the Prismas as well. Some of the names might be different, but I think all the numbers will be the same. And you'll notice as we go through, I don't think we've come across one yet, but some of them don't actually have numbers at all. In fact, here's one, the cream. This one just simply says cream, it doesn't have a number on the end, and that says made in England. So the oldest pencils that you will find from the Karisma collection, the oldest ones will have no number, because I think they only made a very small amount of pencils in the first instance, and they didn't give it a number to chart to, they just gave them names. So you'll know if it's a pretty old version of the Karisma if it doesn't have a number, and also if it says made in England on the back, because before, I think it was 1995, these pencils were made in England, and then in 95 they moved across for production in the USA. So there will be pencils in here, I'll find one in a bit, that says made in the USA on the back, and then you'll know that they were post 1995. So lemon yellow, this is another one that doesn't have a number. And then the Canary. Now these pencils are actually light fast, and they were, when they were being produced in the UK, they were actually tested for light fastness on the blue wool scale, which I believe is what Derwent used to use, or use on some of their pencils, the blue wool scale. And there are out there some light fast information for each individual pencil, but not for every single one of the Karismas. So you will be able to find out. I'll leave a link in the description of the website that's got loads of info about Karisma pencils, and that does tell you some of the light fast information about individual colours. So I'll leave that below. But yes, they are light fast to a degree. They all have different numbers or levels of light fastness. So this is yellow orange. Now you'll notice that down here we have the yellowed orange, which is the usual Prismacolor name, but this yellow orange is actually sunburst yellow. So Prismacolor changed that to sunburst yellow and kept the yellowed orange for the other colour, which is a completely different colour, and you'll see that in a moment. But sunburst yellow used to be called yellow orange, so I guess that they have changed that because it was just too close to yellowed orange, which is handy. Then we've got the Spanish orange, another colour that we're very familiar with in Prismas. And here's that yellowed orange, so that you can see how different it is to the yellow orange. So I thought it would be interesting to do this video purely because I haven't seen anybody else show a full set of 129 on a video. If there are any videos out there, let me know. I'd love to watch them. And anything to do with Karisma colours, I'm sort of semi-obsessed. So let me know if there's any videos that I should be watching that I haven't seen. But yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting for people. I know it's not something that is a very common thing that you all can go out and just buy off Amazon. But I thought it'd be really interesting for people to see. It'd be interesting for me to watch, I know, so I'm sure it'll be interesting for somebody else out there to watch. Now we have a colour here that doesn't appear in Prismacolors anymore. It's an old colour, and it's Deco Orange, number 1010. So you can't get this in your Prismas. You can only get it as an old Karisma and it is a really lovely colour actually. Very, very light orange. All the Deco colours are beautiful. There's Deco Blue, Deco Aqua is a really nice one. I'll show you that later on. But the Deco colours are lovely. Deco Yellow, as you can see, and Deco Orange, just really desaturated sort of pastel colours. So Salmon Pink, this is the final one that I needed in my collection that I received just this morning. And it wasn't, I don't think it's even the rarest colour. It was just, for some reason, I didn't find it earlier. I think the rarest colours are some of the greens, which we'll come across later. And then we've got Vermilion, which is known in our Prismacolor set as Pale Vermilion. And I'm not really sure, you know, whether this is the exact same colour. It looks a little bit pinker from what I can remember of Pale Vermilion. I am very familiar with the Prismacolor tones, but this to me just looks a bit pinker. It looks a little bit more carmine-ish, which is actually the next colour on the chart. So we've got Carmine Red. But yeah, I can see now that they're next to each other that this is definitely a lot more orange, and it probably does match up better to the Pale Vermilion than I thought. But it is quite deceiving until you put the pink down next to it. Especially as you're coming from an orange, so it sort of tricks your eye. Then we've got the Scarlet Red, which, if I remember correctly, is supposed to replace, I think, the Permanent Red. Sorry, the Permanent Red was supposed to replace the Scarlet Red. So, yeah, it looks like it is the Permanent Red to me. It looks a little bit too dark to be the Poppy Red. It looks a bit, it doesn't look orange enough to be a Poppy Red. I don't think we've got the Poppy Red as a Karisma colour. Then we've got Scarlet Lake. She's kind of pinker actually, so maybe when I made the chart I should have put the Carmine Red next to the Scarlet Lake. But then it would have meant separating it into another family. Then we've got the Crimson Red. And they're so very soft, these pencils. I would say that they are a hair softer than Prismacolor. I just feel like they're even softer, if that's possible. This one's Crimson Lake. And again, I think all of these colours, apart from the Deco Orange, can be found in modern Prismas. So nothing really special on this section. But you can see just how vibrant the colours are. It's amazing really to say how old these pencils are. So you can just see, you know, the quality there as well. So then we move on to our peaches, and we start with the Deco Peach, which is still in the Prismas. It is, isn't it? I'm sort of second guessing myself now. Deco Peach, I'm sure it is still in the Prismas, because we have Deco Peach and Deco Pink, of course, which, whilst quite similar, do definitely have different distinct tones. Then we've got the blush, which is just blush pink in Prisma. So they added the pink. And then pink itself. I'm going to have to do like a direct comparison with the Prismacolor versions of these, because I'm looking at these and I'm thinking I'm sure they are very slightly different colours, or they're a bit more vibrant. So I'm definitely going to have to do that. Compare them and see. We've got the hot pink. Process Red. could have really split this family after the pink and made the hot pink and so on another section, because these top three are very different in tone. Then we've got magenta. So these pencils, as I mentioned earlier, are far superior in production quality to the Prismacolors that we know today that are made in Mexico. And they're really strong. So you'll find with Prismacolors a lot of the time, the leads will break. Sometimes the leads are broken all the way down the barrel. So the cores are completely shattered. And of course, they're incredibly crumbly. Now these can be slightly crumbly just because they are so soft. I think it was the peach or one of the pinks that was crumbly that I noticed earlier. But I'm not sure whether you can tell, but they are much stronger and less prone to breakage than the Prismacolors of today. Everything from the olden days was made better, it seems, doesn't it? It's like the old houses that were built. They will outlive all of these new builds. And I think it's the same for these pencils, and that's probably why they are so sought after as well, because a lot of artists used them back in the day and they're just not happy with the Prismas that replaced them. So we've got a Deco Pink, another colour that we know already, and that one sits side by side with Deco Peach, so you'll be able to see the difference in colour from here to here. Peach is obviously more peach, but it's lighter. And then we've got the Pink Rose. These are definitely more desaturated colours. This is like a little vintage colour palette, this one. So if you're wanting to colour something that looks kind of old and a little bit softer, a little bit more subtle and a bit vintage, then you can use these colours to do that. There are some beautiful colours in the Prismas. Obviously they've extended the range up to 150, so there's a lot more in between colours and unusual tones in the Prismacolor set of today than you would find in this set. And I don't think Prismacolor can be beat really for the colour range, because there are all those unusual tones that you don't find. Now this is Pale Peach, which we know as Light Peach. Then we have Peach itself. Now, because this is a skin tone that I use a lot, I know that there should be an insert here for the colour Nectar, but we don't have that in the Karisma, so we'll move straight on to Henna. I always think of this as being a bacon colour. I don't know why. It just reminds me of like a smoked bacon. But yeah. I'm sure that peach is a bit more orangey as well than a Prismacolor peach. Then we have Mahogany Red. And I think after this I would have put a Black Raspberry in, but we don't have that colour in Karismas. So moving along to purples now, we've got Lavender. Which is quite a different tone to the grade Lavender, which is why that's over here in its different section. The Lavender is definitely more of a red-violet colour. Then we've got Bright Purple. Now, let me have a look at this colour. Yeah, so this looks like it would have been the colour Mulberry from the Prismas. So instead of being called Mulberry, it's called Bright Purple in the Karismas. It's number 995, so I'll be able to check that properly later because they will have the same colour number. Then we have Dalia Purple. Now this is only very cheap printer paper that I'm using, by the way, so the results are beautiful even on very cheap paper. This is purple, which I think should be dark purple in the Prismacolor. So sometimes they just added on a word in the modern set. Now we have that grade lavender, and this is one of those that is made in the USA, so you can see that on the barrel there. That will be post 1995 when production moved over to the USA. So grade lavender. Grade lavender is a fantastic colour for creating shading. So if you're doing skin tone, for example, I always use a grade lavender over the top of the deepest areas of skin tone to, it sort of balances out the reddishness of a skin tone. So if you were using, say, the henna that we looked at earlier, I would layer that over with a grade lavender, and that will just balance that redness a little bit. Then we've got Palma Violet. Sorry, no, we haven't. We've got light violet. Light violet. So this is a colour that we don't have in Prismas, light violet. But to me, it looks like lilac. So I think that that's the colour that it's replaced. We then have Palma Violet, which we do have in the Prismacolor. And then another one that we don't have is Bright Violet. Now I'm not sure that this one has a Prismacolor equivalent. I'd have to get my Prismacolor chart out just to check, but I can't figure out what colour this would have been if not violet. So it looks like violet to me, but it's obviously different because the next pencil is violet, and that is a different colour. It's got a bit more red in it. So there is a distinction there between those two colours. Which one was lost forever and which one is in the Prismacolor, we will only know if we test it. Then we have Grape, which I think is the black grape colour in Prismas. Moving on to the blues now. So this is Cloud Blue, and as you can see, this is a little section of 2 because the colours that were in the original Prismacolor family chart for this section don't exist in the Karismas. So I've just had to put these together because they are in the same family, but they're not very close in tone. So there's the Imperial Violet. There would have been extra colours between there in order to get from one to the other. So they do look quite odd together on their own, but they are definitely in the same family. Okay, so then we've got Light Blue, which is a colour we don't have in Prismas because in the Prismacolor it is called Light Cerulean Blue. So they just added that cerulean word in there. And then I believe this is one of the very rare colours to find. This is Bright Blue Violet. I believe this is the one. I know there's a couple of bright named colours in here, but I believe this is the right one. Bright Blue Violet, which looks a little bit like ultramarine, but it could also be like a China Blue from the Prismacolors. That's what it's reminding me of just to look at it without referencing the chart. It's reminding me of the China Blue. Then we've got the ultramarine, which is incredibly similar, but is a little bit darker. And then Blue Violet. Hopefully you can see that these are all family paired together, even though they look quite different. The undertone is the same. So we've got a deco colour that we haven't got in the Prismas, which is Deco Blue. And it is a wonderful colour because there is nothing lighter or in the same family than the non-photo blue. I think I put the Sky Blue Light in the original chart as being the lighter version, but it's just that bit different. Whereas this Deco Blue is like having a really light non-photo blue. And then this Sky Blue, which doesn't exist in the Prismas, is the actual non-photo blue colour. So here we are. You have a lighter version of the non-photo blue, which I think is needed in the Prismacolor set. We then have True Blue. And Copenhagen. These are ones we all know. I'm not being very careful filling this chart in, am I? But it's just a rough chart really, so that I can see at a glance the colours in the family. And this one's Indigo Blue. It's probably the darkest blue that we've got in the whole set. Okay, so the next family is the Blue Slate family. Again, there should be more colours in here, like the Blue Violet Lake and the Blue Lake from the Prismas. We don't have those here, so I'm just doing my best. I have a Periwinkle, which is a gorgeous colour. Again, another unusual tone that you don't usually find in coloured pencil sets. I think this colour does have a similar one in the Black Widow Dragon set. I'm struggling to remember the name of it, but it is a really, really nice bluish grey, or greyish blue. Then we have the Slate Grey, which is usually put right at the end of the Prismacolor chart order with all the greys, but it actually falls in here, I think. It's just about to go into green rather than blue, which is when we move on to these unusual greens, including the Celadon Green. We've got Jade Green. Am I on camera? No. Good job I noticed before I went too far. So we've got Celadon and then we've got Jade. I might actually be on camera. It just depends because I can only see a small area. Then we've got Mediterranean Blue, which you would think would fall into one of the blue categories that we've just done. However, it's one of those funny blues that doesn't seem to fit anywhere within the previous sections. So I've put it here because it seems like that's the best place to put it, but it's still a little bit, I'm not sure. Then we have the Peacock Blue, which again does have just that bit of green in it, but it's not an aqua or an aquamarine, it's just a funny colour all of its own really, but those two go really well together. Okay, the next ones we have are the aquas. So we have another colour that we haven't seen in Prismas, which is Deco Aqua. I would love to get all these deco colours together and complete a page with them. It'd be super sweet, like a pastel, very light tinted colours on the page. So we've got Light Aqua, and Aquamarine. And what we're missing is the Cobalt Turquoise, which would usually go after the Aquamarine in blend order. We don't have that in Karisma's. We have this green family, starting with the light green. The true green. My personal favourite ever Prismacolor colour, which is Parrot Green. I absolutely love this colour. It's really jungly and exotic and just reminds me of the jungle. And yeah, I just love it. Then we've got Peacock Green. And hopefully you will be seeing how all these colours marry together. Okay, then we've got light yellow green, which is not a Prismacolor colour, and I don't believe it exists within Prismas. Just looking at the tone of it, it could be a Deco green. We don't have one of those, but that's what it could be. Could be used along with the Deco colours. Then we've got another colour with a funny name, which is Green Beige, but this was replaced with Spring Green. So if you're familiar with the Prismacolor names, you will know Spring Green. Then we have Grass Green. And Dark Green. Another Beige colour. This is a funny name, and these, I think it's this yellow Beige that is another one of those really rare colours. The yellow Beige, number 990. It looks like a chartreuse colour, like a yellow chartreuse, but it actually isn't. It's slightly different. So the next one is that yellow chartreuse, and I'll show you. Hopefully you'll be able to see a difference. They are very, very similar. Very similar. But I think just looking at the leads, again, I'm not sure whether the camera will pick this up, but this one looks slightly grayer. The yellow Beige looks slightly grayer than the yellow chartreuse, but they are incredibly similar. I think the yellow Beige just has that slight bit more of a green bite to it than the yellow, which is more of a yellow. Then we've got chartreuse. Lime peel. And marine green. Now the apple green was a funny one that I tried to put in a family in my original Prismacolor family chart, and it just wouldn't really fit in a certain place. Like it would fit with one colour but then another colour of a totally different family, so I didn't know where to put it. This apple green goes here. Now again, you can use this along with the chartreuse and it will make a lovely blend, but it just didn't fit here going through into lime peel, so we've put it in its own category alongside the olive green. Now usually I wouldn't put these together, but all of the colours in the Prismacolor olive green family are missing in the Karismas, so I put it next to the apple because they actually do go really nicely together as well. So the apple is a really versatile colour that seems to go with a lot of different green tones. We then have beige. Now this is a funny place to put this, but it doesn't really go in the peaches and the oranges. You could probably get away with it in with the peaches, but it's just not right. So I've put it down here strangely next to the burnt ochre. But you know, when you see them together, you see how nicely they will blend and how they're actually part of the same family. Now, we would like to have some colours in between there to soften the blend a little bit and make it a bit more seamless, but they are within that same family, so that's where they go. If you have the Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils, you will know that there is several stages or percentages of ochres and umbers and things like that, and you do get like a 10% burnt ochre and a 50% burnt ochre, and that's kind of this colour palette as well. So if you'll recognise those if you have those pencils. Then we've got the Terracotta, which is another one without a number, so I know it's an old pencil. And without looking, it will have to have been made in England. Yep. Just because of the timeline of when they were produced. We've got Sienna Brown. So Prismacolor have a lot more in between brown tones. Sandbar brown, chocolate brown are the ones that are coming to mind. The chestnut as well. But obviously we don't have as many pencils, so we're not going to have as many of those colours. This is the dark brown. And the burnt umber. Then we have two different browns that seem to sit by themselves, which is the raw umber. Now I think in Prismas this is called burnt umber. They called it raw umber in the Karismas. Same colour, different name. Then we've got the sepia. So these are a little bit colder browns than the ones we just did, which have a definite warmer tone to them. Just looking at those browns as well that I've just done, I probably should have put the terracotta at the bottom of the burnt ochre here, because just looking at that, it's definitely more of the red than it is the brown of these three colours. So if I ever change the chart, I'd do that. Okay, so we're moving on to our greys now. So we know all of our greys in the French category. I'll swatch them anyway just to see them next to all the other greys as well. I'm really interested to see all of those in between warm greys. So French greys to me obviously have a very brownish tone, far browner than the warm grey, which is usually what you would go to for a brownish grey, but they are far browner than that. But they also, I feel, have a little bit of red in them as well. Just that slight bit of red. We've got the 90%. I really like having a lot of different greys. You get them in markers quite a lot. You get blue greys and green greys and all sorts. But in pencils, it's sometimes you get a couple of cold, a couple of warm, and that's it. But I do like having the option of more greys, because say if you have a lot of stonework or architecture and things to colour, you don't want to be using the exact same greys every time. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. So here's the warm grey very light that I think has got to be a 15%. As I said, some of this information that I'm telling you, I read on a wonderful website about Karismas, so I will definitely credit them in the description. But yeah, this is like a 15%. Then we move on to the 20%. And because they're so close in tone, you may not be able to see a huge difference, but definitely there is. Then we have the warm grey 30%, which we know. Another new one is the warm grey light, which I guess would be warm grey 40%. And we've got the 50%. Now the warm grey medium, I guess, would be the 60%. Definitely getting darker throughout this whole section. We have the 70%. And this 70% looks very brown. The 90%. And then finally the warm grey dark, which is interesting because it's even darker than the 90%, which is the darkest grey we've got. So this is like getting near black territory. I don't know if it's quite as dark as black, but it's definitely darker than the 90%, so it's handy to have. Then we move on to our cool greys. 10%. We know these from the Prismas. Nothing new here. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this. It is interesting, at least it is to me. So hopefully it is to you as well. Just the origins really of one of our most loved pencils in this community, the Prismacolors. Just the origins and seeing how the production's changed over the years. The names have changed, numbers were introduced, things like that. But just remember, if you want to change this chart when you download it, it will be that original Excel file. So go ahead and make those adjustments that I mentioned earlier, changing the terracotta and things like that. And there's the 90% cool grey. Then we have these cold greys, which don't exist anymore. And you'll see the difference between the cold and the cool. The cold, as I said earlier, are browner in tone, whereas the cool are bluer in tone. So these cold greys, if I didn't know better, I would think that they were part of a warm grey palette. They are quite, oh, that one's really crumbly. See that one? This is definitely what I would say is more of a warm grey than a cold grey. The cold grey medium is pretty cool, but not cool as in hip, cool as in cold. I've got the cold grey dark, which, yeah, I think is probably more of a cold, but those two are definitely on the warm grey spectrum, I'd say. And then we've got black itself. Now we move on to our metallics. So some of these you may not have seen before. So we have metallic green. Really lovely and buttery, these metallics. A lot of the time you can find with metallic pencils, they're incredibly scratchy and just not pleasant to use at all. But these are really buttery. There's metallic jade, another nice colour. Metallic blue. Metallic Rose is lovely. It's again a very vintage, delicate kind of colour, like a dusky rose. Then we have Metallic Purple, which is definitely a red violet type of purple rather than a true purple. They're actually really nice to use. We've got silver. We've got copper that doesn't appear in Prismas anymore. Now this one is not nice really to use. This one is the definition of the metallic pencil that I was saying earlier, with it being really quite hard and scratchy. I mean, it seems to lay down quite flat, which is good, but it definitely doesn't feel as buttery or as soft as the other metallics. Then we've got bronze, which I've never really thought was a metallic colour. It's more like in that sandbar brown artichoke sort of family than it is in metallic, because it's not even a metallic colour really. But we don't have the sandbar and the artichoke, so I couldn't really put it there. And then this is the gold, which is our final Karisma colour. Okay, so let's have a look at the chart in its entirety. If I just zoom out a little bit, make sure that you can see everything. So what do we think then? What do we think of the colours? What do we think of the ones that were omitted and the ones that are extra? I think you can't deny that the Deco colours are really beautiful. And yeah, it is nice to have those in-between shades of the greys. It's not essential because we do have quite a few. I think there's 6 altogether, warm greys. So they're not essential, but it is nice to fill those in. And hopefully you can see the difference between all of the undertones of the colours and why I've chosen to put them in certain positions that I have. So what are we going to do now? Let me test the white pencil on black just to see the opacity. Now the Prismacolor black is, sorry, the Prismacolor white is a really beautiful creamy opaque colour. So let's test the Karisma white. Here we are, really nice and opaque. Okay, so I really hope you've enjoyed looking at this. If you want to try and find your own Karismas, there is a wonderful eBay seller that often has Karisma sets and may even have some singles if you're looking for certain colours. They're called the Sold Survivor, and I will leave their link in the description as well. They are absolutely wonderful, a brilliant seller that will do their absolute best to help you. And they often, like I say, have Karismas coming up on eBay. But other than that, there's nowhere that I can really tell you to go and find them. They will just crop up from time to time, maybe on Gumtree, maybe on Facebook Marketplace, if you're really lucky. So just keep an eye out for them. But I would say if you can get a hold of just 1 or 2 to try them out, you won't go back. You'll fall down the rabbit hole of wanting to get the whole 129, and it did take me 4 years. So don't expect it to be something that you can do quickly. But yeah, there we go. So download your free chart in the description if you want to do that. And I'd just love to hear your opinions really on the Karisma colours. Have you tried them? Do you want to try them? What do you think of the colours that we have? And anything else you want to chat about, I'm all ears. So thank you so much for watching. Again, another massive thank you to everyone who helped me find the colours that I was looking for. And yeah, I'll see you soon on Colour with Claire.